Hi, I'm Rob Franzese. I'm the Director of the Program in International and Comparative Studies, or PICS. And PICS and the Donia Human Rights Center are delighted to welcome you to the Young Leaders in Human Rights lecture. Dr. Alain Mukwege will give a talk on how Panzi Hospital and its foundation added advocacy to its pillars of care. Dr. Alain Mukwege is a Congolese-born physician and a human rights activist. His work was inspired by his father, Dr. Denis Mukwege, the 2018 Nobel Peace Prize recipient for his advocacy against sexual violence and conflicts. PICS and the DHRC actually had the pleasure of hosting Dr. Mukwege Sr. in September 2016 when they were here, along with Flint native director Michael Ramsell, to give a showing and discussion of the film When Elephants Fight, for an undergraduate event on conflict minerals and human rights in the DRC. So we're equally delighted to have here today Dr. Alain Mukwege, a member of the advisory board of the Panzi Foundation USA, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide holistic care to victims of sexual violence and to advocate to end violence against women and girls in the Democratic Republic of Congo and beyond its borders. Dr. Alain Mukwege is a U of M School of Nursing Research Associate, with also a master's clinical research in translational science and research interest in the development of mechanisms to improve women's health and to prevent gender-based violence. His work involves building partnerships between American institutions and Panzi Hospital to help develop local Congolese capacities to address local problems, including notable collaborations with the University of Michigan School of Nursing, of course, and with World Without Genocide. He advocates for cessation of violence against women in war and in general, as indispensable to the advancement of healthy communities, violence against women being among the most severe global health hazards and human rights violations in the world today. So we're really delighted to have Dr. Alain Mukwege here to speak to us today.
Thank you very much, really. Allow me first to thank each and every one of you actually for being here today. I know this is really a very difficult topic, and but it's really good to have a setting like this one to be able to share about the difficult topics, because so much knowledge can be gained from subjects like this one, so as to find solution to issue. And I can be grateful enough actually for this opportunity, because there's not many opportunities like this one where the Congolese topic and the topic of sexual violence is brought to the table on a platform where people can share about it in a constructive manner. So I'm really privileged to be able to be an ambassador for the Congolese people and for the Congolese women. I would like also to thank the Program for International Collaborative Studies and also the African Studies Center, and as well as the Donia Human Rights Center for organizing this event, and the wonderful team, including Natasha, Roberts, and Brianna, who organized this event. So thank you really from the bottom of my heart for this opportunity. I would like to start by this wonderful quote. Next. Sorry about that. Oh, okay. Okay, wonderful. I would like to start by this wonderful quote from Martin Luther King, one of my heroes, someone that I really admire, because he had a wonderful and clear vision about what society could be and should be. And not only he had that vision, but he also actually acted according to it in order to bring that to fruition, that vision. And there's a lot that can be actually drawn from that quote. But my understanding of it is that in a broader way and in a personal way, my understanding of it is that we are each, and I said that in my previous presentation, that we are each other brothers and sister keepers. And we should be definitely committed and prompt to answer evil and injustice by compassion and justice and care. So in order to be able to be a wall and prevent the darker side of humanity to grow and expand. And my father was able to actually to say that in simpler words, that justice is everybody's business. And will be, I split my presentation in two parts. The first part, actually, I'll talk a little bit about the country itself, the Democratic Republic of Congo, its background, and the factors that brought this situation and the humanitarian crisis that the country is experiencing to this day. And the second part actually will try to underline a little bit how Panzi Hospital and its partners and the women of Congo actually were able to respond to that crisis. And the country itself, the Democratic Republic of Congo, is actually the second largest country in Africa, so it's pretty big. And in terms of population, it's 11th on the list of global countries. So approximately a quarter of the United States in terms of population, but also a quarter in terms of area. And we have 400 ethnic groups and tribes and 4 national languages. But underlining those 400 tribes and ethnic groups, it's quite a diverse and so many different groups. But for more than 40 years, actually, the country was able to be in a relative peace from 1960 to 1998. So the country was in peace, and all that tells us that a peaceful Congo is actually possible, despite the differences and the diversity. And we have 8 neighboring countries, including Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, Sudan, South Sudan, and Central Republic. But we also have a larger part of the population is actually living in rural areas because mostly farmers. That percentage has a little changed lately because most of these communities have fled to the main cities for safety reasons. But I'm from this place here called Bukavu in eastern Congo, close to Kivu Lake, and that's where I grew up. But the country itself is a marvel in terms of wealth. Not only natural wealth, mineral wealth, but it's just astonishing. In the middle of Africa, it's let me put it this way: just after Amazonia, this is the second largest ecological lung for the globe, because we have the second largest forest, but also the second largest bassin, in terms of precipitation and water, but also a huge diversity in terms of fauna and flora. But that wealth is, as you can see on this map here, we have diamond mines, gold mines, coltan mines, copper, tin, manganese. So you name it, and there's a high likelihood that you will find it in Congo, and especially centered in the east here, as you can see on this map. So most of the mineral resources especially are located in the east here. The forest is a little bit more toward the west, but most of the mineral resources are centered more in the east here. And this has a huge political, but also it has a huge meaning, and you will come to understand it later. But it's also known for the conflict minerals. I don't know if you ever heard of that term before. Conflict minerals, they are called conflict minerals because they has been exploited illegally by armed group in eastern Congo. And some of them are tin, tungsten, cobalt, tantalum, and gold. They're really important for actual technology because they are used in everything that is electronic, and especially cobalt and tin that are used in building electric batteries. And if you ever follow the movie When Elephant Fights from Michael Ramsdale, but also if you ever also watched the movie documentary of Leonardo DiCaprio, Blood Diamonds. So if you ever watch Blood Diamonds, it's typically the same issue, same situation, but instead of diamonds, it's mostly this mineral here that are at the center of the humanitarian crisis in DRC. So the wealth in Eastern Congo is a little bit estimated to $19 trillion. So $19 trillion, to put that in perspective, the oil reserve for Saudi Arabia is estimated to $14 trillion. So actually all the mineral resources have more value than the oil reserve of Saudi Arabia, which is it's really important. But the very unfortunate thing is that the country itself is really, really low on the scale of poverty. So 180 per capita in GDP and 186 in Human Development Index. So with a large part of the country living below this level of poverty. So all that brings us the question, why this situation, why the country has come to this level of really erosion. And the answer can be found a little bit in Congo's history. What happened in Congo's history in the early the 18th century? Congo was awarded as a property to the King of Belgium. And that in itself was an issue because most colony was administered by countries, but the Congo itself was administered by by a person, the King of Belgium. And the system was not there in place to create like a kind of collaboration between the countries, but also it was more centering every mineral resources and kind of looting a little bit on the mineral resources and the people. And that created a centralized system that kept the country very low in the development index. Unfortunately, when the independence came, and I referred that in one of my presentations, we had only four university professors when we had the independence in 1960. When you have only 4 university professors, it's very difficult to establish laws, to build new law in order to be able to give a direction to the country. So we had that issue coming when we had the independence. And there was already a system in place, and that system was definitely centered into bringing all the wealth towards the leader, toward the top. And the remainder of the country didn't receive much of it. And unfortunately, as a consequence, over the years, that system kind of weakened all the infrastructure. So you talk about defense, politics, education. So everything kind of crumbled slowly, but surely crumbles to a point that it became inefficient to be able to protect the people or be able to give a direction to the country. All that would have continued if it wasn't for the drama, the tragic events of 1996 with the Rwandese genocide. And most of us have heard of it. But what happened in the genocide too that people don't know much about is that the defeated army of Rwanda and also the Interahamwe, which were very much involved into the massacre of 1996, they fled the country and they were pushed toward the Democratic Republic of Congo. And when they crossed the border, that army and the Interahamwe established themselves in Eastern Congo, but in order to sustain their activities, they started pillaging or looting on the population and using extreme violence to do so. Unfortunately, in that kind of circumstance, we lost many people. So it's the deadliest conflict since World War II. Very unfortunately, it's also called the Great African War because there were so many countries involved. But the also saddest part is that the women and children were those that actually were most affected by this. Because what happened is that rape started to be used as a systematic weapon of war. Why that? Because when it was done with extreme violence, the goal was definitely to destroy the family. It was not just to destroy the women, but to destroy the family and the communities. And in destroying the family and the community, you weaken a social structure that cannot be able to actually support the children and all the other things. And what happened is that women and children are actually forced into forced labor, but also forced into being a child soldier. So everything started crumbling from that. And it was also used as an easy way to control large areas. And in that structure, and that is the second part of my presentation, in that circumstance, that's where the Panzi model was created. It was really a response to the need, but it really didn't start it that way. It started really in 1996 as a women health care center. So the center was built in order to be able to provide first care for women in labor, and it started really like on a very small corn farm here, and very unfortunately, actually, one of the first patients that my father received were actually women that came to the hospital presenting with severe wounds of abuse and sexual violence. At first, it was definitely a surprise for him because for his 10 years of practice in Congo, you have never seen wounds like those ones. So he thought it probably would be an isolated case, but the case started piling and piling. And that, as it started piling and piling, the hospital had to adjust in order to be able to respond to the need. And in responding to the need, the hospital created 4 departments. The main one, pediatric surgery, internal medicine, obstetrics and gynecology, but we also created 1 special department for victims of sexual violence, and also the treatment of urogenital fistula. And over the years, the hospital grew and expanded a little bit, but the Panzi model actually was really incremental. So it was not like we woke up and say, okay, we're going to do it this way. The Panzi model started a little bit like a process in which we started to accompany the victims. So they came at the hospital to be treated physically because of their wounds, but as they came at the hospital, they started opening up and started being able to tell their story. So the hospital provided psychotherapy for them. We searched we recruited a psychotherapist for them, and we kept on adding the level in order to be able to provide the most holistic care possible for the victims. And thanks to a lot of the partners and the creation of Panzi Foundation, most of those services were provided for free. So it was first surgical intervention, free hospitalization, and free prevention pack. And in the framework of Panzi Hospital, we started being overwhelmed because the resources were limited, but also because we wanted to be able to provide the best care possible for the victims, but also for all the patients coming to the hospital. So that's how the ICAR, the International Center for Applied Research and Training, was created. It was created as a partnership between the University of Michigan and the Panzi Hospital. So the little story about it. So in 2010, my father came to the University of Michigan for the Raoul Wallenberg Prize. And as he came during the lecture, he used a quote from Raoul Wallenberg saying that 1 person can make a difference. And one of my mentors, Janice Miller, was attending the event, and she proposed and said, "How can I help? I'm just a researcher." I said, "Bring your research, we need it." And that's how the center was created. But now the center actually includes other schools, as the School of Public Health, with Shavan Arlo, who's right now the chair of the ICART Center. So we need to, the center itself is like a hub for all the expertise coming from different departments, different institutions that can help to, the mission of the center is to be able to provide local solutions to local problems. And as we followed those patients, we provide psychotherapy, group therapy, and music therapy, which was found to be very, very effective. And Congolese women love to sing, so those was tools that were used to be able to put their pain in music, but also get rid of those burden, but also a safe house. And in that process, so now we came out with an issue is that the women stayed at the hospital. We provided a safe house, but they stayed at the hospital. So they had a difficulty to go back into society because, mostly because they were detached or separated from their families. So they needed to be able to, and most of them look for ways to be self-sufficient. And the center started providing vocational training like tailoring, but also teaching in building some art pieces. So a lot of things that can help them to generate revenue, not only generate revenue, but also build their confidence and self-worth. After going through that and be a little bit stigmatized, but they were able to feel that they can actually undertake something despite everything that happened to them. And alphabetization was also a huge key because some of the women that came to the center expressed the need to build their own little business model. But for them, they didn't know how to read and write, so we provided that training. And for the youngest one who were very, very devoted and committed to the program, the foundation started following them into primary, secondary, and tertiary education. We are very, very proud of some of the survivors that actually became staff members at the hospital. Some are as nurses, and some are in the administration as well. The daycare is provided also to the children born from rape, because the practice itself is used as an ethnic cleansing. So what happened is that the Interamwe or those rebel group come in a village, and after that, if the survivors become pregnant, they come and take those children away to bring them into their group and building their group as child soldiers, but after as Interamwe or that's the center is providing daycare for those children as well. So the social integration actually continued as microcredit and accompaniment and support. And some women came with projects like this is a coffee farm that one of the survivor came the idea, and the other one came with the idea of selling bags, which was we actually sold a few at another event recently. As one of the most important thing also is legal assistance. The justice system in Congo were very, very cautious in order to address the issue of sexual violence. And I was telling that Robert earlier, the reason why is that the government had to do a lot of deals in order to be able to address some of the issues. And some of the deals are very, very unfortunate because they included some of the rebel group inside the government army. And in including those, they tried to protect them for legal persecution. And bringing cases of sexual violence to justice is itself a very, very dangerous endeavor. But the hospital started to strengthen its legal service in order to be able to record all those events, a little bit like what is done, I think, in Chechnya, to be able to record all those atrocities committed there, so that to build a case toward a prosecution. And very recently, those efforts actually bear fruit with one of the first trial that went on for sexual violence like 2 years ago. So here now is where advocacy really became became a very important tool, because the patient or the survivors will come into the program, and the program will provide health care, mental health, social reintegration, and legal assistance. But because the community structure outside of the program was not prepared enough in order to be able to welcome them back, or because there were so many issues like stigmatization, ongoing conflicts, and politics involved in all that, we will receive women that either didn't want to go back to the society, they will stay on the hospital ground or inside the limits of the hospital, or they will leave and then come back again for the same issue, because the community was not prepared to be able to include them back. So this is where actually, to address this wall there, that's where advocacy really kind of started to take place. Because we needed, the hospital started to educate locally, men, women, about the issue of sexual violence, what are the conditions in which all this happened, but also why it is really necessary to be able to include and welcome the survivor back, because it was not their fault, and they were victims as so many others. But in giving the community the opportunity to speak, it was also an opportunity to lift up the shame that the community were feeling. But outside of the local community, there were an increased need and necessity to be able to bring that issue on the international platform. And it is critical, because so many people outside of Congo didn't even know that we lost so many people. They didn't even know that there was that issue of sexual violence. So being able to bring that issue outside was important, so that the international community can bring out the attention needed for that issue to be addressed on a larger platform. And we had some success. We had some success on the local level. There were a group of men called Badirika, which means change, that was initiated throughout that. We had stronger laws that actually were signed and implemented in order to reduce sexual violence. And we had more support, not only coming from the center, but outside of the center for the survivors, and more legal prosecution for perpetrators. On the international level now, that's where the provision 1502 from the Dodd-Frank Act was implemented. For those that don't know that provision actually stipulates that all the products that are consumed in the United States has to make sure that all the conflict minerals that I talked about earlier do not come from region where there is conflict. So like kind of putting that out of the system in order to not indirectly let the American customer to pay or fund for the conflict. Unfortunately, this resolution here is really under political attack recently, and actually it was suspended recently. So if there is something that we can advocate for, is definitely for a stronger provision to be implemented at the governmental level. Because if the United States show the way, there's many countries that will follow. And by many countries following that, then the rebel groups will not have the means to support the activity through the illegal exploitation of mineral resources. But there's also resolution like the UN Council from which rape was actually elevated to the level of crime against humanity, and also crime of genocide. Because it was really shown that it had a huge impact not only on the survivor itself, but also on the community at large, in decreasing natality rates, in transmission of diseases. So it was really elevated as a crime against humanity. And there was also a resolution creating the first office on sexual violence, which goal was to end impunity, but also empower the survivors. And ending impunity we had some success there too, because from the time that advocacy started really to be pushed forth, there were cases of Bosco Tangada. So all this on top here that were persecuted and actually received a heavy sanction from the International Criminal Court for the activity in Eastern Congo, which is in itself something that will dissuade rebels to continue what they do. But we still have some work to do, though, because there's still 100 armored groups in Eastern Congo, and Laurent Kunda and Sultani Makenga haven't been persecuted yet. So we still have a lot of things to do. And what we have learned from that, is that most women, what they ask for when they come to the center, when they come to Panzi, they ask for peace, they ask for justice, and they ask for restoration as part of the process for the well-being. The level of it depends from one case to another what they prioritize in the process of healing. But as we are looking at the trend, we were able to know where the priority for these women are and what are the issues that we should try to prioritize. So, and from those individual needs, that's where we were able to build protocols, intervention, and policy that were actually tailored to the group that we were trying to address. And we were pretty successful at that. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the group, those protocol intervention was also replicated in other settings, like in Iraq, but also in Albania, I think, and also in Chad and Mali. So our hope also comes from the fact that we had so much support coming from everywhere, but also our hope actually really comes from these survivors, because when you come to the hospital, some of them you wouldn't believe the story that they tell you that they went through, because they express so much enthusiasm and hope for the future. It's so encouraging. But also hope comes from the fact that it's also changing the mentality locally. It's a arduous process, but we are hoping and we are getting there. How to help? The reason why I'm bringing this slide up is because the last time that we had, my father was in 2016, he gave a speech, I think, at one of the Human Rights Center here on campus. And some of the students there, the question that really come often is, what can we do on our part? And the first thing is really to learn, to learn about the issue. It's difficult to advocate for something that we don't really grasp all the weight of it. And once you grasp the weight of it, definitely you will know that this is definitely something to address. From that, raising awareness and advocate will flow naturally. But we also need to recruit more people and attention, because we need lawyers, we need scientists, we need advocate, we need everything necessary to be able to push that endeavor forward. I will also encourage you to buy conscientiously. There's a project called Enough Project that was made in order to be able to trace a little bit among the main brands out there. What are the brands that make sure that the product are free of the mineral of conflict? And you can go online and check that, because it's a pretty clear list showing from the best that do the best to get free of the minerals, but also from the worst that actually don't trace enough where the suppliers came from. I want to finish with these quotes, but also finish with these resources. If you really want to know more about Congo, there's this wonderful book, King Leopold Ghost, that really talks about the earliest year of colonization, and from it you will learn about everything that led to the weakened state that we inherited during the independence. But you can also learn from Half the Sky from Nicholas Christa. It's really encouraging. That shows not only for Congolese women, but the process that survivors go through to be able to get back to a point where they feel really restored, and Congolese stories. The documentary, there's a wonderful documentary for Michael Ramsdale, who is actually from Michigan. I think it's right now he lives, I didn't want to bring this, where is Michigan State is? Lansing, East Lansing. Yes, I didn't want to bring that here, but he's from East Lansing, and he did a wonderful documentary on When Elephant Fights. That documentary is very, very detailed about all the way that those minerals are exploited and what are those impacts on the communities. There's the documentary Men Who Men's Women that is focused a little bit more on Panzi Hospital and what Panzi Hospital has brought to the community, and also a wonderful documentary, City of Joy, that's focused a little bit more on the women experience side of it and how those pillars have been impactful in their lives. So thank you very much. And thank you for being here, really. Thank you for being here. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you. It's always amazing work to hear about. So just at the end there, in terms of conflict-free mineral, is there such a thing as a conflict-free phone yet? Or conflict-free laptop or any device that we can buy?
So as of right now, it's a very difficult question. It's a very difficult thing to ask because what happened when the Dodd-Frank Act was actually promoted and signed is that the suppliers trying to find ways to mix the Congolese mineral with other minerals that were coming from cleaner mines. So those were the kind of things that were going aside to try to avoid that. But at least it put pressure on them. It put pressure on them in finding ways to be able to have a cleaner product. And when it puts pressure on the side of the brands, then the brand can put pressure on the side of the governments to try to get everything in order. And that's the part that we really needs to get to. So when you put pressure on the brand put pressure on the supply chain, and the supply chain put the pressure on the governments in order to clean up a little bit clean up a little bit the production process of this mineral in a way that is beneficial to the community. It's trying to establish a fair trade. But as of right now, it's very possible that most of our electronics have a little bit of Congo in it. But it will, with time, if there's a really strong enough law that really kind of have higher provision and sanction, harsher provision and sanction against that illegal exploitation of mineral, I'm very confident that that's going to lead to a cleaner business model. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I spent a good deal of time thinking about international justice, so I have a couple of questions along those lines. I think Lubanga, his case was the first conviction in the International Criminal Court ever. And I'm wondering what the reaction among the local populations might be. Is it seen as justice executed by this international body that the domestic court couldn't, or is it seen as an imposition of Western notions of justice on the Congolese land?
Actually, it's just seen as a problem that is just went away, which is what actually the people need, is just to see that those problems are actually handled. Because when they don't see that, then the rebel group not only have the liberty to continue their activities, but there's also a room for other rebel groups to actually come into existence, because there's no feeling that they're going to be sanctioned. So having the international community actually to address and be able to persecute some of the rebels involved in the massacre and the atrocity of Eastern Congo was a huge, huge plus for the community there. And in my father actually speech, acceptance speech of Nobel Peace Prize, he explicitly said that there is a report from the United Nations that was able to pinpoint all the atrocity that took place in Congo since 1996 to 2007. The mapping report is there, is in the UN. It doesn't, that report doesn't cite the perpetrator, but they are able to talk about all the atrocities that took place. The reason why the name were actually, from the report is because they didn't want it to create like international tension with some countries. But if that report is out there and we're able to know who were involved in that, and one of the proposals of my father to create a special criminal court for Congo, just like the Russia criminal court for Rwanda, then we can have a system there to tell the communities that if you have an issue like this, bring it to the court and the court will take it from there, which is encouraging.
Somewhat related to that, in thinking about these situations, often the local public talks about how there's a local process of justice and reconciliation. And you go to Uganda, there's Mano Puto, it's a local ritual. You go to Rwanda, there's Gacaca Code. It's more formal, but still somewhat informal. I wonder if there's something similar in this case. And
those local courts, are really good for not for the leaders of the rebel groups, because some of them have so much money, so much power that if you bring them in the court like this, they will probably kill everybody. But they are really good for those tribunals are really good for the lower level individuals, so that they can express, if they have remorse, they can express their remorse, but help the community to heal a little bit. But as of right now, and the reason why a special criminal court for Congo makes sense is that the justice system is still very, very weak. There's still a lot of corruption running rampant. So even if it was a huge step forward that 2 years ago we had actually a conviction. So we had someone who was actually judged guilty for the atrocity committed in Eastern Congo, which for many years, most of them were not guilty and let free to continue on what they were doing. So that's a recent process, but in order to strengthen that process, having an international special court will be a huge plus. And in the future, when we start now addressing the issue of the members or the smaller assailant or perpetrator, then we can have that group, and that will address the issue at the community level. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Yes, Meredith?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you could talk about the role of China in the refining of the minerals and their role internationally.
I think China had a pretty much clear, and it's really sad because the United States could have stepped up a lot earlier in order to avoid this, in order to build a clear path toward the exploitation of mineral. But China, the approach of China is a little bit different. They don't get much involved in the politics of the country. So as long as there is a clear way that they can have the mineral resources, or the mineral resources can get to China, and they have been very much involved in trying to see path by which they can get to those minerals, because they understood how valuable they were for the electronic business. And most of the electronics, as you know, are made in China. So they were very much involved in that. But on the political side of things, they are definitely letting things happen. as long as there is that chain of supply. But if we can implement a stronger law like the Dodd-Frank Act and the provision that I was talking about before, then those laws will put pressure on the supply chain, and that pressure will go back to China also to make sure that all the minerals that are used inside the electronic industry are coming from cleaner environments. So it's really important to have those laws in place, because as someone showed the good example, then other countries will start copying the same model.
What is the context in which the mothers are able to have contact with their own children?
Yes.
Are they separated? I mean, I saw the daycare center.
Mm.
If the mothers are not able sometimes to go back to their villages and the hospital isn't set up for an alternative village,
Yes.
how is that relationship going forward?
Yes, and that's where actually the psychiatry team at Panzi Hospital is doing a huge work, not only to heal the survivors, but if a child is born of that, trying to build, which is really, really difficult for most of the survivors, to try to build that bond between the child and the mother. That's why the child is also, we make sure that the children born from rape stay in the limit of the hospital, so there's still a permanent interaction between the mother and the child, so that over the long term, it can, because what we are afraid of is that the frustration that, or the pain that the survivor experience, they transfer it to their children. And by transferring it to the children, some of them kind of take a rebellious path as well, and a violence path as well. But if we're able to kind of smoothen that relationship and help it to build over time, that's helped to reduce that possibility of a violent generation coming forward. However, it's not successful for all of them, and in that regard, then the hospital, the safe house, because in the safe house there's a portion for survivors, but there's also a portion for children. Those children are put for adoption. There. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. I know this is a very difficult topic, but I really talk from the bottom of my heart that being able to share it like this is like lifting a burden off my shoulders. So thank you so much for coming.